Hey friends, Mike J from Flourish here with the Lazy D&D Talk Show for 11 July 2021. This is a show goes about an hour in which we talk about all kinds of things related to D&D. Things that might have happened over the past week, things that are on my mind, whatever we happen, things that people bring up in our Twitch chat. This show, like all of the work of Flourish, is brought to you by the patrons of Flourish. If you want to help support this show, you can do so in 4 ways. You can subscribe to the Flourish newsletter. You can follow me here on YouTube. You can become a direct supporter of Flourish by going to patreon.com/Flourish and signing up, or you can pick up my book, Return to the Lazy Dungeon Master. You can do all 4 ways. So talking about pretty much anything we want. And let's see, to start off today, I think, is it the biggest news? I don't know if it's the biggest news or whatever, but certainly there is a lot of attention being applied to the D&D Magic the Gathering set in a couple of different directions. How it relates for us Dungeons & Dragons players and how it relates to those who play Magic. And I've kind of turned into both because I've started playing Magic again because of this. So of interest to D&D folks are the fact that it looks like they're releasing every week a free adventure for D&D. And these have, if they have any connection to Magic, I haven't seen it yet. There are 2 of them, the Hidden Page, I didn't capitalize that right, the Hidden Page and In Scarlet Flames. These are both written by Will Hindmark, who I don't know, but I hear very good things about them from people that I know and respect. Oop, ignore that. So yeah, I've got them in reverse order. In Scarlet Flames is number 1. So there's the link in Twitch chat. Anybody else, if anybody asks where they can get it, please pass it along. You can get it by going to the Magic the Gathering homepage on Wizards, clicking on Story. It's sitting under there. I guess they have a story archive. So in Scarlet Flames, I talked a little bit about, there's some interesting stuff in here. And first of all, it's free. So, we shouldn't get too bent. But there's some odd things with the editing. The worst of which is that there are numbers for a map that doesn't exist. So we have the Guard Chamber, Moldering Suppliers, Rotten Common Room. There's a whole bunch of different places to explore. And then you go to the map in the end. And the map doesn't have any of those locations marked on it. There is no map for those places. There's really just the map for the end. And that's weird. I heard some friends of mine talking about it and they're like, yeah, that's strange, but it's fine. It's fine. And I'm like, I don't know. You got a bunch of rooms without a map. That's an issue. So I think a map got lost somewhere. And given, and in my opinion, right? Like, I don't want to bash the adventure. It's free. It's fine. But given the quality of the maps, I don't think it's that hard to add another map that has the right room numbers on it. Like, Kobold Press, the number 2 publisher in D&D, would have no problem at all grabbing a Dyson map and using a Dyson map. I wonder if that might have been the issue. I don't know. So, yeah, given the way the rest of this looks, it's a shockingly bad map. And then it's even worse because the map is only half there. So that's a real shame. But again, you get what you pay for. Right. I haven't really looked at the second one. The Hidden Page is number 2 of these adventures. They are apparently about hunting a red wizard in particular. So Sword Coasty kind of stuff. Oh, look at this. So this one that actually has a magic the setting, right? A mage from the Sword Coast is trying to find a plane of existence known as Ravnica. Ah, okay. I don't know if these count as canon. I think they said they don't, which is probably, which probably matters. Let's see at least if their map in here. Let's see if they solve that problem. It looks like they did. Hey, here's a map. Quality level's not getting much better, is it? But at least it's got numbers on it, and the numbers correspond to the right thing. Here's another map with different styles. That's kind of interesting. I wonder. I don't know. Again, like, these are the quality of the maps that I send in when I'm asking for a map order. So, but hey, again, free. So I haven't looked at the adventure at all, and maybe the adventure is fantastic, and the price is right. I'll download them and check them out. We noticed, some friends and I were looking at it, and noticed there's no editor listed on this either. That's not great. You should get an editor. And it's like, it's a huge, as far as I can tell, like, they said that they can't, like we're really sorry, but we're not going to be we're going to be supply constrained on this Magic the Gathering set, which means pieces of expensive cardboard are too hard for us to produce to keep up with the demand. right? Like, seriously? Like, I mean, that's fine, but that means that they're going to be bathing in money and they can't afford a cartographer. Now, again, and they can't afford an editor, right? Like, they can certainly afford it. Now, probably it was a timeline thing. We wanted to, Evil John says, it's not the cardboard. Is that not what was supplying? I mean, what's the supply constraint? They said that, like, we're pretty sure that the stores are not going to get as many as they need. I guess it's shipping, right? So shipping slices of cardboard. My point is that, like, the material costs are pretty low. Shipping costs, you'd think in the last 30 years they would have figured that out. And granted, you know, shipping containers are running $20,000 instead of $5,000 to ship. Yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? I get it. But for 30 years, yeah, I get it, right? I guess my point is, like, they're going to be bathing in money with this set, right? They got me to pay money for it, and I didn't even buy physical cards yet. I bought digital cards, and I paid money for it. So the money's there to hire a cartographer, to pay the whatever, you know, $100 to $300 it costs to make a map for an adventure you're going to give away as a major promo for your new set, and hiring an editor for, you know, a couple $1,000s to edit your thing. If even a couple thousand, I bet it's in the hundreds, right? So my point is, you could put a little bit more effort into your promo event, which is a shame because it's probably great. And again, I've heard from everybody that says that the writer's really good. I don't want to complain too, and it's free, so whatever, you know, go get it, and that's cool. Everything's cool. But when you're the number one company for this kind of thing, you think, like, you could have hired some people. But I bet you it's a production issue. I bet, like, it was a last minute, oh my God, we got to get this thing out the door because it's got to be released when the set is released, I guess, right? And, you know, we don't have to. I do wonder, it wouldn't, you know, I'm making this up. I have no idea if this is true, but I do wonder if, like, they started with Dyson maps and they're like, we can't include Dyson maps in our promo, even if they were commercially given away, because Dyson gives his map away for commercial use, you know? So there was a Twitter thread on the other day about why shipping is killing the business of indie board game designers. That's really interesting. Bugs. As somebody who is not about to, but will soon be running a Kickstarter and is considering having pallets of books shipped around the world, I'm very concerned about this. But I'm going to be working with people who can hopefully help me with this problem, because I want to make sure I get nice books in people's hands. So we'll figure that out. Anyway, these are very interesting. I mean, they're interesting. They're free. You can check them out. You know, again, you go to this story page. So you go to the Magic the Gathering homepage. You click on, in this case, the hamburger, and you go to story. If your screen is wide enough, you don't have to go to story. And right at the top, you got the Scarlet Frames and Hidden page. I think it's 2 of 5. So I think that there are 3 more of these adventures coming out, which is kind of cool. That's pretty cool. Nice freebie bowl promo. So the other, I should turn all these into checkboxes. Turn into checkboxes. So I've been playing Magic again. This got me, like, so I played Magic. Actually, Magic dragged me away from D&D when I was in college, back in the mid-90s. So in the early 90s, I was playing D&D. And in the mid-90s, I worked at a software store called Babbage's with my friends. And we got in, we were very apprehensive. We were like, why is our software store, our computer store, selling cards? But then we got into it, and man, we played the hell out of it in college. We played a lot of it in college. And that was way fun. So then I stopped. Yeah, Babbage's, pour one out. They turned into GameStop, which is now like number 1 company in the world. I think it's bigger than Apple, according to Reddit. So I haven't played. I don't know when I stopped playing. I guess it was also in college. I think we stopped playing in college. Never really got into the other sets. And then played like little bits here and there once I moved to where I live now. And then stopped playing and got back into D&D. I played D&D for 20 years, right? And it's been 20 years I've been playing D&D exclusively. And I've known about Magic, and every so often I'll kind of like take a look. And, you know, there's friends of mine, Dave Chalker, who I know is huge into Magic and stuff like that. And I've got other friends that are big into Magic. But I hadn't played. And then they did this D&D thing, right? And I'm like, wait, you know, I'll give it a shot. It'd be really cool to kind of see D&D cards that I know and love and see them played in Magic. And I know enough Magic to play. But I'm like, I don't know how to play, right? Like, I don't even know how to do this. And physical cards, like, I don't know who I'd play with, but I've played Hearthstone. I played a lot of Hearthstone. So I'm like, okay, I know how online card games work. So I'll play Arena. I'll try Arena. So I put Arena on my phone and on my tablet, and I went through the tutorials and played those, and that was fun. And then I I thought that the kind of the best way for me to play relatively cheaply was to do the sealed deck league, the sealed deck games. So it's about $10 or $12, I think, to play. I think it's $10 buys you 1,600 things. It's a little bit more. So it's about, I think it's like $12.50. So $12.50 gets you into a sealed deck group. And you get, I think it's some number of booster packs that you open. And then you build a 40 card, and you get a bunch of lands. And you get a 40 card, you build a 40 card deck from the cards that you got in there. And the cool bit is, because it costs you $12.50 to get in, those cards are then tied to your account. So you have those cards later if you want to play in a standard, if you want to build a real deck and play in standard, you have that. But in the meantime, it's like a cheap way to just play, right? Build a deck with these new cards and play. And I did, and I played my first game and lost, and I said, it's very likely I'm going to lose 3 games in a row. But then I started winning, and I won 4 games, and now I'm down to, I'm 4-2 right now, right? I've won 4 games, I've lost 2 games. I'm playing a black-white deck that it's mostly the Weenie Horde. I'm like, I'm going to go back. I remember old strategies that I played when I did sealed deck leagues back in the 90s. And it's like, play small creatures that only require 1 type of mana. Try to play 2 colors if you can. If you have enough cards, play 2 color, right? And I luckily I have enough white and black cards to play 2 color. So I'm able to play a 2 color 40 card deck. Everything has a relatively low casting cost. I think I have a couple of creatures that have like a 5. I think I have 1 5, 1 4, and everything else costs less, 2s and 3s, which means if I can get the upper hand early, I can do okay. But I get my ass kicked if I go long. And today I went long, and they pulled out like the Xanathar card and kicked my ass with the Xanathar card. So, but it was cool, like seeing how the Xanathar card works. I had like a ghoul wielding a Vorpal sword, which was fun. There's sort of a lot of neat mechanics in the game. I haven't done like dungeon delving stuff, but it was fun to be able to play Magic with D&D theme over it. I like it. I like the cards. I've gotten did I get my 12? Like if I stopped playing, would I got $12.50 out of it? Probably not. I don't know. That's like $12.50. Like you can buy a full game for it. But I've gotten a couple hours of fun out of it so far. So yeah, so it's not, and I'm playing on an iPad. I have a big iPad Pro, and it's nice on the iPad Pro. It burns that battery down, so keep that sucker plugged in. But yeah, but it's been fun, and I've enjoyed playing it. So that's a good time. I kind of don't know, like I guess what I would like, I don't know. So I guess I don't know what my plan is. I now have a bunch of crystals. I've got 4,000 crystals, so I could play in 2 more sealed decks. Crystals are, this is how they get you, right? Is that the 1,600 crystals for $10. And but everything costs more than that. So you really need to spend more, and everything's divisible by like crazy odd numbers. So, but I have enough to play in 2 more sealed deck games, which would then get me, and you earn packs. I think 3 packs or so. So you earn more cards, which means you sort of you can play sealed deck games up until you have enough cards to play standard, right? And then I could play standard with whatever cards I've picked up, which might be fun. And hopefully I don't drop $1,000 on it. I would kind of hope, and I don't know if they do this in Arena. I know that physically they have these commander decks that you can buy, but they're pretty expensive. But it's like a full playable 100 card deck, right? It's a great big deck that gives you a real interesting theme. I would like to see if in Arena they have some of theme, instead of me just buying piles of random cards until I can build a deck. It would be kind of cool if I could build like a theme deck, right? Or I could buy a theme deck and then play for a while with that theme deck. So we'll see. But I think with 2 more Arena runs, which I already paid for essentially, I think I've dropped about $25 total for everything that I've gotten. And I have enough to play in 2 more Arena games, maybe more. And I think that that's probably enough cards to be able to build a reasonable deck. That, you're not going to have every rare, and you're not going to be able to build like every single theme, but I think that I could have enough to play it. And so that's a fun. And honestly, at this point, what I need, why am I doing this, is I need another hobby. And the reason why is that the world of my world here in D&D really has become, I hate to say it, I don't want to say it, but a second job, right? I have a second job. it's a great job and I love it. And I know that people said the minute your hobby turns into your job is the minute you start to hate your job, but I don't hate my job. I love all this D&D stuff that I'm doing. I really, really enjoy it. But I'm doing a lot of work. And when I start to like work with publishers and distribution places, and I'm like hemming and hawing about how I'm going to do a print run for my next book, oh my God, that doesn't feel like D&D, right? I'm still playing a lot of D&D, and we're still talking a lot of D&D, but I need to like step away from D&D for a bit and play some D&D in Magic the Gathering, right? And we're talking in Discord, and it's like, painting minis would be another good thing. And I got piles of unpainted minis, and I got lots of paint. So there's certainly an option there. But I definitely need to have another outlet where I can kind of step away from, checking Discord and making sure that there's no jerks on my YouTube comments and all that kind of stuff, So but it's all good. It's all good. So anyway, I've enjoyed it. Do I recommend it? I don't know. I don't know if I can recommend Magic to people. Like it's money. And so far they don't quite have like all of the different paid options that I would like. I think what I would like best is if they had some way for me to buy some theme decks and play with those theme decks for like $10 a pop, right? If they said $10 buys you a really cool black-white deck, $10 also buys you a really cool red-green deck or whatever. And I could buy like 3 or 4 preset decks and then enjoy those and play with those, plus throw all those cards into my collection and build decks. And I don't know if they do that in Arena. Somebody else who's played Arena can tell me if they ever do theme decks for like a set, and then those kind of go into your pool, and then you can sort of build decks out of it. The idea of buying everything random would be a bit much. Yeah, I might try to make myself paint a mini again, and just say like, all I have to do is paint one mini, and then see if I can get kind of prime myself to paint minis again, because I enjoy painting it. I just don't need them that much. I've got thousands of minis, so I really don't need. So yeah, let's review some products. So one thing I think I might do next week, I'm going to give a little preview for next week, which is I'm probably going to review some some people's Patreon pages, because while reviewing individual products is really good, there's a lot of interesting ways that the D&D hobby is changing and how we get the material that's useful to us. And some of the most useful material I've been getting have been coming through Patreon creators, people that are creating on Patreon. So, I mean, yeah, the obvious one, like you want to know about the biggest Patreon one, is Arcadia, right? So the Arcadia magazine by Matt Colville, MCDM, my friend James Intercasso is the lead editor of that. I think he's the lead editor of that. And I don't know what the title is, but I know he's the guy that's putting it together. And they are releasing Dragon Magazine quality magazines once a month through their Patreon. And it's a huge Patreon. Like, the fact that I even have to like advertise it means it doesn't need my help, right? I forget how many. Let's take a quick look. They have it's like 17,000 backers or something. They have 9,340 patrons. 9,340, right? Crazy good. And if you sign up for the $5 one, you get access to all existing issues of Arcadia. So it's really tremendous. And so that one is an obvious Patreon. And that's an obvious example of how the industry is changing because of Patreon. But there are many others. There are many other groups, and they're making lots of different things. Everything from music. We were talking about music. Tabletop audio. Tokens and miniatures. Printable Heroes does a fantastic Patreon. And so there's lots of them. Anyway, next week I'm going to pick 2 Patreon patrons, 2 Patreon sites that I support, that I love, and we're going to review those. But today we are going to review 2 PDF products. But first, I want to wish my mother a happy birthday. Hi, Mom. You're here, and it's my mom's birthday today. Everybody wish my mom a happy birthday. All my friends. So there's a lag before everybody says happy birthday. Happy birthday. Yay. Happy birthday, Mom. So I have 2 products that I'm going to talk about today. One of them is by my friend Doryen Chen, and the name of the product is Knife to Know You. Both of these products are your grimdark slasher horror kind of things, which, you've heard me talk in the past about, like, I wish D&D didn't have so much grimdark. And the reality is, like, I don't mind it when that's clearly the theme. And in these cases, it's clearly the theme. So Knife to Know You is a one-shot 5e OGL adventure. My friend Doryen Chen is the writer for it. And she put together an adventure that is built around like teenage horror slasher movies and kind of teenage movies in general. So she put in here like inspiration and themes for this adventure, and includes like The Breakfast Club, Heathers, Riverdale, music, Time Cop, Mitch Murder, Nina, and authors Christopher Pike. So she put some really kind of fun, and I would say like, but if you, I bet you if you grabbed onto a lot of the 80s slasher movies, that fits this too. This is intended to be a one-shot horror 5e adventure. And the layout and the fonts, right, she did a fantastic job with the layout and the fonts on this. It's really the whole theme of the adventure. Very, very good, strong front page about all of the safety concern, safety issues with this, and making sure your players are all on board so you can have a great time. Offers of consent in gaming, which I highly recommend, and the TTRPG safety toolkit, which I also recommend. Well, check those out if you have never checked them out. They're good. Short adventure, 18 pages, right? Which I think is great, right? I don't need a 36-page adventure for one shot. I'm very happy with an 18-page one shot. So I'll tell you. So my wife and I are watching the streaming game Fantasy High, and when I'm watching Fantasy High, which is an outstanding live play show, really fun. The language is strong, so if you don't like strong language, it's probably not for you. But it's hysterical, and it's fantasy high school. It's a John Waters fantasy game, right? And really fun. And a lot of the themes of that, like I can see this fit into that. Like it's got a lot of contemporary humor set in a fantasy game. And one of the things it has that's really neat. So it's standard SRD. You play with 5e stuff. And it has rules for duets if you want to play with just a DM and a player. It's got recommendations on how to do that. It has a way to play with just using the commoner stat block, which would be really fun for a one shot. You don't want to have to do character generation, character creation, and you don't want because it's this fantasy horror, slasher genre. You can, having a weaker character kind of fits, right? Instead of having like the superheroics, not quite superheroics, but certainly the high heroics of a 5e game. Even at first level characters, I'm sure would do fine. And I think the intent is that it's a first level. I'm almost sure it's a first level adventure. First level adventure for 1 to 4 characters, which means you can just grab a pre-gen and go as well. But it means you don't have like a ton of resources. So I think that's really neat, like having phases of play. She put in here a system for if you die, everyone resets and you kind of start back at the beginning. Would I expand on the duet rules? Adventure works well in duet style experience with one player and the sidekick character. Sidekick should be a younger sibling or friend of the main character. Sidekick should act as a foil to the main character's intention. Should not act, should? If the main character is too cautious, the sidekick is reckless. If the main character wants to keep something in secret, the sidekick is bursting and seems to reveal it. That's kind of an interesting take. Sidekick should never betray or countermand the main character's agency, but the primary role is to be the devil on the main character's shoulder. That's really interesting. I don't know if it has rules for like how to scale combat or anything like that for two characters instead of 5. But given that you're intended to run with one way you can run is with a commoner stat block, that could be really interesting. So where can you get this? Let me before we dig too deep. Really cool art. I guess I'm already in it. Really cool art. It's sort of a 3-act adventure. I'm not going to spoil a lot of the theme of the adventure, but heavy on the exploration, a lot of interesting character stuff, and going good solid haunted house kind of adventure. So really fun, really good writing, neat art, great design. I highly recommend you should if you are looking for like a fun one-shot Halloween adventure, or just want to grab some friends and play a fun slasher adventure in your off time. This is the one I would go for. So this one is Knife to Know You. Let me grab the link and paste it. I look at the ad she did, right? This like VCR style ad is so cool. So pick it up. It's on DriveThruRPG. Link is in Twitch. If you're watching on YouTube, the link is in the show notes below. You can grab it right there. $5 and worth it. And this is a good example. So I've talked in the past, I think when I was talking about 5e hardcore mode, about like 5e wrappers. This is like a 5e, it's like a small 5e wrapper, right? It's taking 5e rules, you know how to play it, but it's saying things like, here's how to play with a commoner, or here's how to play in a duet, right? So it's adding slight changes to how a typical 5e game works. Certainly thematically, it's changing how the game works. And that's really cool. So I highly recommend it. Pick up Knife to Know You on DriveThruRPG. The next one, let's see, I need a drink. So the next one I had mentioned a few times in the past. If you go back into the 80s, Was it early 90s? I think it was in the 80s when the satanic panic for D&D really picked up. And we always felt like it was a completely ridiculous notion that our D&D books, where we're just like a bunch of characters going and fighting orcs, and yet a whole bunch of crazy people are claiming that the spells are real, and the jack chick tracks of like, now I'm going to teach you the real spells, and we're going to go be occult people and all this stuff. And you're like, how ridiculous is that? And all I can say is, if Mork Borg had existed back then, we wouldn't have much of an argument on the D&D side, because Mork Borg just grabs on to the occult nature of dark fantasy RPG and keeps going and going and going and going and going and digging in deeper. I would say that Mork Borg is almost a piece of art as much as it is an RPG. And I'll start off, I love this book, and I bought the physical one, and I recommend, if you buy it, that you buy the physical one. You can pick it up on Amazon for $27, and I'm going to paste that in, and it is worth the $27. I'm picking Amazon because I don't know if you could buy it direct from them. They are the company is not a U.S. company, so if you're in the U.S., I don't know, and I think it's significantly cheaper to buy it this way too, for whatever it's going to say. And it's shipping in 1 day, which means it's sitting right now. It's already in your house. Shipping 1 day means your neighbor has it and has been waiting for you to order it so they can sneak up and slide a copy of this book. It is a gorgeous, small, heavily, and you'll see when I flip through it, the style, it is 90% style. Look at that cover for crying out loud. And this is what I mean. Like, if your mom found this on your bookshelf when you're 13 years old in 1989 and saw this crazy devil-headed skeleton with an upside-down crucifix on its head, you're like, yeah, I guess you're right. Right? I don't really have a strong argument against the satanic panic when this is so it is a black metal RPG. It is grim. It is brutal. The world, is this the one where like the world is dying is like the main theme, right? It is packed. So it's definitely an old school RPG. If you think about old school OSR, old school Renaissance kind of games, this is an OSR game. Very lightweight rules, very straightforward character creation rules, and 95% theme and attitude, than more so than rules and mechanics. Heavy on the random tables, which I love. If you know me, you know how much I love random tables and how I love to see random tables. I love to see random tables shock the imagination. So you have like D10 occult things. A silver bird cage slays whatever is placed behind its bar slowly over one long night. That which is killed reanimates twice as strong and as a raging uncontrollable undead. Right? It's just dark stuff like this. They have like, traps and deviltry, scorpion-filled basket poised to fall. Where was the fish hooks at eye level? That was my favorite. Fish hooks hanging at eye level, right? Like, there's just every aspect of it is built around, look at the weather, right? So it's not like storms. It's lifeless gray, hammering rain, piercing wind. These adjectives are fantastic. Deafening storms, soup-thick mist, crackling frost, irritating drizzle. Everything is thematic. Every table is not, hey, weather is a storm or hot. It is, every aspect of this drips. I want to say literally, but it's not literally, but it's as close to literal as you can be without being literally. Every aspect is just drips the entire attitude of the game. Corpse plundering, death mask of one of the PCs. Look at that. Like, you find your own death mask on the guy. Where did that come from? D66, right? Crazy. So the whole thing, I'm just going to flip through it because the art is so, the design is so crazy, right? Like, hit points, the wind from the west, from the Sunderland. Really good, like, thematic text that just gets your head in the game without dumping a ton of text on you. What was written must be, right? Look at this. Look at that. It just changes its style. Who would say that, like, crazy writing pink on black is the way do you want to go? Literally can actually mean figuratively now, according to Merriam-Webster. No, I don't want them to change that because now I can't hold that over people. Thanks, millennials. So the whole thing just like this is the map of the world, right? Like that's how stylized this whole thing is. That's the world map, right? You can barely comprehend it, but that's what they're talking about. Locations, every page that has its own crazy design. There you go. There's a nice picture, right? And very, thick with gore, just powerful. The Psalms, right? Really neat stuff. It does have, so you can sort of build a character from scratch, right? Or it has certain characters. Look at this. Here's the weapons, right? It's got one page for each weapon. And the mechanics are femur, D4, right? But of course it's a femur, not a club. So you roll a D10 to see like what weapon you have, Here are all the different kinds of weapon types, knife, arrows, bow. I mean, it uses this as its table for what weapon you pick, right? Amazing, amazing ideas here. How armor works, equipment, abilities and tests, very straightforward. Like it's got ability scores and bonuses and you just roll and off you go. It is really, really, yeah. So right. So Rogan Gratz says, hugely inspiring, but because it can be very jarring to the usual D&D safety tools and explicitly giving flavor during a game is crucial. Yes, you definitely want to talk with your players before you run this. For some, there's a human heart for hit points. So it goes on and on. Really cool. And then the physical book has like reflective pages. So there's parts that are like reflective chrome. It's crazy what they did. So if you're if you want like the darkest of the dark, if Shadow of the Demon Lord, if Robert Schwab's Shadow of the Demon Lord was too pedestrian for you, if you felt like it really didn't, while it tried to get into the depths of a dark fantasy game, but didn't really get there, this is the book you want to pick up. And if this isn't dark enough for you, I can't help you. And probably no one can, and probably you shouldn't leave the house. You probably shouldn't go anywhere because really neat. What else can I say about this? Cool monsters. Oh, so there's one thing that I think is pretty profound with a book like this. Given this incredibly brutal, incredibly dark, themes, they've managed to do it without being without, as far as I can tell, any clear racist tropes or any clear misogynist tropes, right? Like I was looking at another OSR game that came well recommended, and I opened up the PDF because I'm kind of like, I want to look across the board at all different kinds of products, from brand new stuff to, I want to look at brand new stuff to classic stuff, old stuff, and OSR, right? There's a lot of neat things that are coming out of OSR. So I picked up an OSR, I'm not going to name it, but I picked up an OSR book, an old school kind of RPG. I was flipping through it and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then they have like character portraits for all of the main characters. And I think there's only like 4. And one of them was a wizard, and the wizard is a female and she's topless. And I'm like, why is there a topless wizard as the only option for the wizard for the picture? And like, what if I was like wanting to play this game with people I hadn't met? And I'm like, here are your character classes. And then put out a topless wizard as the number one. Like the dudes are all wearing heavy armor. The wizard's topless. And I was like, I mean, it means I'm not going to run it. I'm not going to recommend it, right? Like, I understand that like Apocalypse World is a little like that, but Apocalypse World also has its own theme, right? It's different. And this was meant to be just like a straight RPG. So I like that they've managed to really grab onto this dark metal style RPG, this really, really, this really thematic style, and still not delve into racist and misogynist tropes that have existed in old school gaming for a long time. I think that is really interesting and shows you, do you need safety tools for this book? Oh my God, yes. And it's probably going to be like, 20-page long legal document when you that you have to sign off in order to play a game like this. Look at these. I just like these traits, right? But it's interesting to me that they could grab on with both hands and make a book like this and still not fall back on what we had in the 80s, which was, a lot of racist, misogynist tropes. So I thought that was really interesting. It was something, and I might have missed stuff. There might be people where they look at it and go, actually, it's not as good as they think. Because, I read it and I didn't see anything, but here we are. So really, if again, more art book than RPG. I made a character just to make one, and that was fun. Just making a character was fun. This isn't a game I want to run. I like high fantasy, right? And I know that my players, for the most part, like high fantasy. So this isn't the kind of game that I would want to play. I could see like if I hand selected certain players, like would I run it? I might run it for like a one shot, right? And if I pick the right player, would I play in it? Yeah, I would play in it definitely. Like I think it would be fun. You know, I would do it more from instead of black metal, more of the death metal. From my understanding of the difference between black metal and death metal is a lot more self-deprecating and recognizes how funny it is. And death metal are generally cheery people. They just like death metal. Black metal, on the other hand, they're into their world. So I would play it more from the death metal perspective of it's fun. It's so brutal, it's funny. And when I played like Robert Schwab's Shadow of the Demon Lord, that's what it was like. It's so dark and dismal, it's funny. This one I think could play a lot like that. But I don't want to run it. But is it inspiring? Yeah, it's inspiring. As a product, it's very inspiring. You know, as seeing how you can grab theme so heavily and make 95% of your RPG product about theme, you know, that's where it goes. These are some of the character options that you can choose that are built into the game, right? And as you can see, a stoic hermit, right? Wretched royalty, heretical priest, occult herb master. So really cool. I just love I love the style. Seth Goblin, the Bent. And then it has monsters, right? And the monsters are really, these are monsters. Lich. Hey, it's got a lich. I like anyone that's got a lich. A troll. You know, really neat lady porcelain. Isn't that freaky? This is some freaky stuff. So yeah, do I recommend it for everybody? No. I mean, take a look at the previews and see if this is the kind of thing that's interesting. But if the idea of a black metal RPG that's incredibly stylized and a well put together product interests you, I recommend it. So I think we'll get off the screen because I don't know, it'll burn my screen. So those are your two reviews today. That was Knife to Know You by Doryen Chin and Mork Borg, which I recommend both products. I think they're outstanding. There is a PDF. If you're not sure that you want to get Mork Borg, the PDF is only $15, but for the extra 10, I can't imagine not getting the physical one, because the physical one, and look, DTRPG gave a staff pick. It's very popular. It's a Mithril bestseller. You know, really good. I have both. I bought both the PDF and the physical version, and I bought them with my. So this past week, let's talk about downtime sessions. I've talked about downtime. I've written articles about downtime. I don't know that I've had. I don't know if I've talked about downtime sessions. Let's go to Flourish. Let's go to downtime. Running downtime sessions. So what a downtime session, if you're not really familiar with it, one of the options that you have in D&D, if you think about the three types of gameplay that we have in D&D, which they describe as exploration, role-playing, and combat, there's kind of a fourth, and that fourth is downtime. And if you think about like exploration and role-playing sort of has like minute to hour time frames, downtime has days to week time frames. And it's sort of options where you say in between sessions or at the beginning of a session, you might say 10 days have passed since you finished your adventure exploring the Cackling Chasm. And you have an opportunity for downtime. What kinds of things would you like to do with your downtime? And the Player's Handbook has information in Chapter 8 of the Player's Handbook has a list of potential downtime activities. Xanathar's Guide also expands upon this in Chapter 2. And the Dungeon Master's Guide has expansions of it in Chapter 6. So in the two of the three core books talk about downtime sessions, and then Xanathar's also has stuff about downtime sessions. But you can also customize it, which I highly recommend. And there's some tricks to running a downtime scene. Blades in the Dark has excellent downtime. I really need to spend more time with Blades in the Dark. I've got it sitting right here. Try to do it without hitting the mic. All right, got my copy of Blades in the Dark sitting within arm's reach. So I need to, and boy, I keep pulling stuff from this that I know is in there. So I want to spend more time with Blades in the Dark. So yeah, you could definitely see it. So there's some tricks though, because downtime, because it's not like a standard way that we play D&D, it can be weird to run it. It can be a little awkward to run it. And so I've run it a few times. I don't do it very often. I'll do it, I don't know, probably only 2 or 3 times in a campaign will I run it. I reached out to Twitter to say like, what are some good keys for running good downtime sessions, and got a lot of stuff back. And there was definitely like cohesion around certain ideas. And some of those were that you let the players know ahead of time that downtime is coming, right? Warn them. If you're going to run it during a session, Let them know a week early, hey, at the beginning of our next session, we're going to have some downtime. Think about the kinds of things your character might want to. You can run downtime away from the table. You could do it one-on-one, say like in the 10 days, what did you do? And talk with somebody, or do it over email, or do it in text chat, or however. You can also have people do it in email, say, like we'll describe it in email, or do it in Discord offline, right? This is an opportunity to hand the world over to the players. They can sort of expand the world themselves. You want to define downtime options, and I'll talk more about this, right? But I think that's really important. Frame events, I don't even know what I meant by that. Clarify hooks, I kind of don't know what I meant by that. And if you regroup it isn't into them, you don't do them, right? Like downtime is a weird one. It's a little like skill challenges in 4E. It's like, it's an interesting concept, but it's a little awkward to run. And the answer might be, it doesn't always run that well, right? So Scipio says, what do you see as the pros and cons of running it during a session versus asynchronously? So the advantage of doing it during a session is everybody is there. Everybody can hear what other people are doing, and you can play off of one another. And you generally have everyone's attention, at least as much as you're going to. If you play offline, it's highly likely some people are not going to engage. Because I don't know if your groups are like my groups, but I have a lot of players where they only engage when they're at the table. They're not really engaged in between. And if they're not used to engaging in between sessions, they're probably not going to know to even do it. So that's a big one. The advantages of running it offline is that you're not wasting table time with it. And wasting is kind of extreme, but players have more opportunity to take more time when they're running it offline. You're not worried about taking too much time, one player taking too much time with their downtime. So yeah, so there are advantages and disadvantages to both, right? So a couple things. So I did one this past week for my Wednesday group. I said they got back from adventure, they had some downtime, and what I did is I wrote an email, and I think I'm gonna try to take some of the idea from the email. My own pop-up is bothering me. I did. So I put some of it in here. I did update this, right? And I think it's like you can send out an email and say, here are some general downtime activities you can take, right? And then here are some, and these are the general runs, right? Here's a combined list of the standard downtime activities in Player's Guide and Dungeon Master's Guide, right? And these Xanathars picks up of these. So you could say, here's a bunch of things that you might do during your downtime, and then you can offer a few. And what I like to do is you can almost, if you're willing to prep your game early, you can sit down and go through the characters and say, what do I think the characters might be interested in doing during their downtime? I know, for example, that Silsarin is interested in becoming a blacksmith, right? He's a elven, or he's a Furbolg ranger, but he's interested in becoming a blacksmith. So I said, during your downtime, you could spend time with the Black Iron Dwarves and learn more about blacksmithing. And someone else said, I want to go finish the commission on the plate armor that I was interested in. And you say, okay. And, so you look at each character and say, like, here are the things that I think the player is going to be interested in their character doing during downtime, and just offer it. And a lot of times they'll go, that one, right? You can also pick story hooks and say, like, I know that you guys have the Book of Thrune, which you got from the Dark Priest. Do you want to explore the Book of Thrune, right? And that can be an option. And they might say, no, we're not opening that cursed thing. Are you kidding? Last time we did, a gibbering mouther popped up. And, but then they may say, yeah, let's open it. Oh my God, a gibbering mouther popped up. So I think it really helps. To me, like, a good way to run it is you warn them ahead of time. You say, like, you have an option, now that we finish this adventure, or now that we finish this part of this quest, you have the option for spending about 10 days in the City of 10 Towns for downtime activities. Here's a bunch, and then in an email, I would send this in an email. I would send it pretty soon after the game finished, so they have like some time. And I'd say, here's a list of just general things you can do if you're interested. Carousing, crafting a magic item, all the ones that are here. And you might pull things out of here if you're like, they're not going to be able to do it. Like building a stronghold, you might say, they're not going to build a stronghold, so I'm going to get that out. So don't put things in there you don't want them to do. And then you might say, those are some general ones. And then here's some specific ones. And then you list the specific ones. And let them know, like, pick one or two of these things that you'd like to do. And if you're interested, then we'll talk about them at the beginning of the next game. And that way they come to the next game and everybody sort of knows that they had it. And they don't have to engage. They could be like, no, I'm cool, right? And maybe it's a slow time, right? It's not a fast-paced, high-action game. It breaks the strong start a little bit because it doesn't have a strong start. You're starting with what are the downtime things that you did, but it can work. It's not the kind of thing you probably want to do most often. Here are the examples of some specific downtime activities. These were from my Ghost of Saltmarsh game, right? It was 6 things that I threw on the table. Do they want to research the Black Hunger, the ink black whale that sunk so many ships? Do they want to meet the local wizard Kaladeck? Pick up rumors about the empty nest? Hunt for Ned Shakeshaft, the elusive spy? Conduct ceremonies at the Druid's Grove or the Temple of Procan? Research the Endless Nadar, right? So these were very specific Ghost of Saltmarsh things. And then the dirty trick is, since you're writing out specific ones, you can be pretty confident the players are going to say, ooh, that sounds cool. You're throwing options in front of them. You're not railroading them because they can say no and they can choose something else. But you say, like, here are some suggestions. And then you build your secrets around these because you're pretty sure they're going to come up. So you can think about, like, what is the Black Hunger? What information about the city, the wizard Kaladeck? What are some rumors swirling around the, where might they find Ned Shakeshaft? What's going on with him? What might they learn from ceremonies at the Druid's Grove or the Temple of Procan, or what might they learn about the Endless Nadar? So you already have the prompts because you're giving the prompts to them to then investigate it, and then you already have the answers because you knew what the questions were, right? So it's a good lazy trick for building out the story through the activities of the characters and giving the players agency to choose what they want, but still coming back with interesting things. And that means you really need to have a pile of secrets. So like when I run a downtime session, I might have 20 secrets and clues instead of 10, because they're going to be a lot. You're going to be dumping secrets and clues, hopefully, like crazy in the beginning of your game. And then you're still running a game after that where you need more secrets and clues. So throwing it out there really works. And then you can kind of put in small adventures. One thing I did is, like, I knew when they were opening up the Book of Thrune, this happened in my last game. I knew that if they chose to open up the Book of Thrune, I made sure that all the characters were around, so that if things went bad with the Book of Thrune, and they did, and a powerful gibbering mouther pops up, and it did, all the characters are there and can get into the fight, rather than, oh, I was off at the temple, so I wasn't there. So unless the player, you can kind of telegraph to them, you may want to be there, right? And they'll go, oh, okay. And it's okay, because this is a game. And you can, if you're just nudging towards the fun is a fine activity. It's not railroading. You don't have to act the way the world acted. You're nudging. Nudge them in the direction. I think that's a good way to go. So, but it is a very different kind of D&D, right? Running downtime sessions is a very different kind of D&D. And it may not be for you. And you might try it and hate it. There's some other things I should put in here. I updated the article, but I should update it again. It's also long. It needs to be edited down. And something else that I would recommend is that, like, you want to make sure that, generally speaking, every character has one downtime activity that you want to talk to, and make sure everybody's involved and go around the table like it's initiative. Make sure that you're giving equal screen time to each of the players. I had one player who said, I have 2 things I want to do. And you're like, okay, but maybe we'll do one and then we'll go around and do another and then we're done. Right. But it's very easy for very creative players to grab onto a lot of the spotlight, and players who aren't really there might back off. But you want to make sure to say, like, you don't want to push too hard. If they say, I'm good, I'm just going to, relax. Okay, great. And you might say, do you want to roll on the carousing table and see what happens? Right. We have 2 different carousing tables, you can kind of pull the thread a little bit. Give something to the person who's not all that engaged, and make sure that the people who are super engaged are not too engaged that they're taking up all the time. So that's part of the facilitation that a DM has to do, right? We have to facilitate to make sure that we're running an even balance of fun across the board, rather than this person's having a great time, this person's hating life. Although sometimes maybe they just want a break, right? It's okay. If a player is sitting on their phone, are they happy? That might be okay, right? If they're not totally engaged and the other player is, it's probably okay. Right? I'll take time and relax. So yeah, hang on with a loose grip, as we do with all things, but that is pretty good. So it is already pretty close to the end of the show. So I guess I'll just tease the idea that my Wednesday group, for the first time in like almost a year and a half, pretty close to a year and a half, we stopped playing in person in March of 2020. And it is now July of 2021. And for the first time, we're going to have players back at the table. Everybody's vaccinated and everybody's coming to the table. And it's going to be crazy. Like that's going to be wild. So we're going to hear what that's like. Next week, I'll talk about, like, returning to the physical table and what that's like. And can I do it? Right? Have I lost all of my skills because I've been doing everything online? Like, what's it going to be like not playing with Discord? What's going to be like when I can't copy and paste a digital map? How does that even work? Right? Weird. So we're going to find out. I did a little practice session. My wife and I played a one-on-one game, and I played with just tabletop stuff. So I know I can do it, but boy, is it weird. So we're gonna have to see. So that is it for today's episode of the Lazy D&D Talk Show. I want to thank everybody on Twitch for hanging out with me. Thank you very much for watching the show. If you like the show and you want to support me, you can do so in 4 ways. 1, you can subscribe to my channel on YouTube. 2, you can subscribe to the Sly Flourish newsletter and get a D&D tip sent directly to your inbox every Tuesday. 3, you can subscribe to the Sly Flourish Patreon. This is the best way to support me directly, and you get a lot of really good exclusive stuff, but most important, you help support shows like this. Or 4, you can pick up any of my books, but in particular, you would probably enjoy Return of the Lazy Dungeon Master or the Lazy DM's Workbook. Thank you very much for watching the show. Have a great day.